Chicago's Union Station had a heartbeat all its own, a steady thrum of arrivals and departures, of lives brushing past each other with barely a glance. It was a cathedral of travel where polished marble echoed with hurried footsteps, muffled goodbyes, and the rolling of tired suitcases. Tom Hanks stood quietly in a corner near the Great Hall, beneath the towering Corinthian columns that had watched a century of human traffic. He looked like any other aging traveler, cap low, jacket zipped against the wind that Chicago was famous for. But beneath that gentle, unassuming smile was something stirring. A memory? A hunch? Maybe just a feeling too strong to ignore. He wasn't here for a premiere. No one knew he was even in town. In fact, Tom had flown in early that morning under a different name, taken a cab from Midway, and asked the driver to drop him off 3 blocks from the station so he could walk the final stretch alone. The email had come weeks ago, from an old friend who now worked for Amtrak's Lost Property Division. "There's something you might want to see," it read. "A suitcase, no ID, no claim, but the contents, well, they're haunting." Tom had almost deleted it. He got messages like that all the time. But something about this one stuck. The way the friend described it, like a ghost in a suitcase. He'd thought about it in the shower, on set, in traffic. And then finally he booked the flight. Inside the station, life bustled around him. College students dragging duffels. A businessman barking into a headset. A young mother cradling her baby near a vending machine. But Tom's eyes were locked on the far side of the terminal, near Track 9. That's where they had stored the suitcase, in a service room behind an old wooden door labeled baggage, staff only. When the clerk finally opened the door for him, Tom stepped into the dim room and saw it. A vintage leather suitcase, scratched and scuffed, the buckles tarnished by time. It looked like it had traveled the world, and then been forgotten by it. He crouched beside it, ran a hand along the cracked leather, and slowly opened it. Inside were things you couldn't fake. A stack of black and white photographs, some from the 1950s, others even earlier. A tattered notebook filled with looping cursive entries dated back to 1949. A child's wool sweater folded carefully beside a yellowing birth certificate. There was a postcard from New Orleans, a silver locket with a woman's initials engraved on the back, and a sealed envelope marked, "To be opened if I'm not found." Tom didn't move. He didn't speak. The room seemed to fall silent around him. It felt less like opening a bag and more like unlocking someone's entire existence. The kind of thing you only see in movies. And yet here it was, in his hands. Real, heavy, intimate. A story begging not just to be told, but to be understood. And something about it, something deep in his bones, told Tom that this wasn't just anyone's story. He had no idea yet, but the past was calling him by name. Tom Hanks sat cross-legged on the floor of the storage room, completely unaware of the time slipping past. Outside, trains rumbled in and out of Union Station. Passengers moved in tides, and overhead announcements echoed faintly like distant waves. But here, in this small forgotten room behind Track 9, time had folded inward. The notebook was the first thing that took him under. The handwriting was elegant but worn, the ink faded but still legible. A woman named Eleanor Duvall had written it, starting in 1949. Page after page, she wrote of her travels, her dreams, and her search for someone, a man she had lost touch with during the war. The entries felt personal, like secrets whispered to the moon. "If I don't find him in Chicago, I'll try St. Louis. But my heart tells me he came through here. This city hums with memories. I feel them when I sit by the platform." Tom gently turned each page as if handling the edges of someone's soul. She'd written about jazz clubs, boarding houses, a job at a coat check stand, and a mysterious letter she'd never mailed, because she was too afraid of the answer. The sealed envelope marked "To be opened if I'm not found" rested beside him now, but he still hadn't opened it. Instead, he reached for the photographs. One in particular stopped him cold. It was a picture of a young man in uniform, arms wrapped around a smiling woman. Eleanor, no doubt. But the man looked hauntingly familiar. Tom furrowed his brow, studying the photo closer. Not because he knew the man, he didn't, but because there was something in his eyes, something that reminded him of his own father. The era, the expression, the posture. It struck him how history has a way of circling back around. Was this Eleanor's lost love? He placed the photo gently on top of the notebook and opened the locket. Inside, the same photo, folded tiny, protected all these years. And on the back of the frame, a date, March 4th, 1950. That's when it clicked. Tom had seen that date once before, etched into a train manifest that a World War II memorabilia collector had shown him during a film shoot years ago. It was a list of soldiers arriving home from Europe. One of the names was circled, James R. Langston. He pulled out his phone and started searching, fingers trembling. The trail was cold, but not impossible. He found a registry of veterans' graves just outside Chicago. But it wasn't James Langston's grave he found. It was Eleanor's. Died 1986. Buried alone, no known next of kin. Tom's breath caught. She never left the city, never stopped waiting. He stared at the suitcase as if it were a casket filled with unsaid words. Something in him, something he didn't know was still alive, stirred with a strange conviction. This wasn't just a story. This was a hand reaching out from the past, asking for closure. And if Eleanor had waited all these years, then maybe, just maybe, Tom was the one meant to answer. 2 weeks had passed since Tom Hanks left Union Station with the suitcase in the trunk of his car and a promise forming quietly in his heart. The search for James R. Langston had led him to unexpected corners, phone calls with aged veterans, dusty record offices, and even a forgotten church ledger in St. Louis. Every lead either crumbled or circled back to Eleanor as if fate were reminding him this was her story. But then, a break. An old nurse named Louise, now retired and living in Florida, responded to one of his inquiries. Langston, she said on the phone, voice trembling. I remember that name. He was a patient in the early 80s at our rehab facility. War injury. Real quiet. But he always asked if the mail had come. Said he was waiting on a letter from a girl named Eleanor. Tom's throat tightened. Did he ever get it? No, she whispered. And I don't think she ever knew where to send it. Tom closed his eyes. The sealed envelope. The one she had marked, to be opened if I'm not found. The next morning, standing under the soft gray sky of Chicago's Rose Hill Cemetery, Tom finally opened the letter. The paper was delicate, the handwriting older, less fluid. James, if you are reading this, it means I was too late. Or you were, but know this. I never stopped believing you'd find me. I kept that photograph near me every day. The world changed, but you stayed the same in my heart. With love always, Eleanor. Tom folded the letter with reverence. Later that afternoon, he returned to Union Station. Not to act, not to observe, but to complete something for someone else. With permission from city officials and a quiet ceremony attended by no more than 4 strangers, including a train conductor who remembered Eleanor, Tom placed the suitcase in a glass display case in the station's small historical exhibit. Inside were her photos, the journal, the sealed letter, and the locket. Above it, a brass plaque read, "In memory of Eleanor Duval, she waited here." Tom stepped back, his reflection faint in the glass, and for the first time in a long while, he felt still. Some stories aren't told on screens. They are told in lives unfinished, in love unspoken, in suitcases left behind. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you get to carry them the last mile. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to keep these forgotten moments alive. Hit the bell icon so you never miss another tale that matters. Sometimes the smallest stories leave the biggest marks. Let's uncover them together.